Hi everyone, I'm Yashvir, and welcome to our audio channel, The Bro Code. So what's this channel about? The name suggests it's about your typical bro code, rules followed by guys, right? But this runs deeper than that. I guess we wanted to discuss how we have grown through life, and how various situations have shaped us. By the means of the podcast on this channel, we hope to say something meaningful and impactful that perhaps you can use in yours. So please join us in this inspiring journey. We hope it helps you in some way.
Hi, everyone, and welcome again to another podcast episode. Once again, I have with me Prashant and Dean in studio. So, bidding you a warm welcome, guys. How have you been?
I've been alright. Busy as hell, but alright, surviving.
All right. I mean,
Yeah, I'd say something is pretty similar on my side. Busy, but keeping going. The weekends seem to
we're
disappear very quickly.
The
that's
weekend,
true.
the weekend is like a lunch break.
It really is. Like you blink, you take two bites of a sandwich, and then it's Monday.
Yeah,
I mean, we're out of winter now. We're in September. We're in spring. Um,
Don't my sinuses
changes
know it?
season. Changing
I
season
won't.
should bring good things, perhaps.
I haven't really suffered with the sinuses this time, but I've been at home, so
Yeah, I mean, we've all
maybe
been
that's why.
locked down. Just finishing up our second vaccine shots, I guess, for the next few
Tomorrow,
weeks.
tomorrow,
Tomorrow's
Oh,
tomorrow.
Prashant's.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mine is on the 6th of October, so a little while, but nearly there.
yeah, that's cool. Mine's on the 8th, I think, my second shot. So, yeah, we're
Oh, that's
getting
good.
there, getting fully vaccinated, and then hopefully we should be out and about again. We're in level 2 right now
Out
with
in a
reduced
boot.
restrictions. So that's good at least. So yeah, I mean, like you guys just mentioned, weekends are too short, perhaps,
Mm.
and our topic today is, just about that mental fatigue. It's about um, going from one thing to the other and to the next and to the next and to the next without much, um, thought of what that's doing to you. So, I guess um, going into lockdown and coming out of lockdown, us working from home, where there's like minimum boundaries between work and home because you're in the same space. So, you're just continuously at that grind and there's no, I guess, room for anything else. So, my first question, I guess, then is, what is mental fatigue to you, to any one of you? Um, Dean?
I don't know. Good. Can I jump in?
Yeah, you go
Yeah,
for it.
Dean, go for it. Go for it. Dean.
Mental fatigue. It's for me like the first thing that comes to mind is just being sluggish. In terms of how quickly I think, how quickly I get to tasks, how quickly I complete tasks. Levels of creativity seem to have fallen off a cliff. Uh, yeah, I'm about as, I don't know, creative as stale bread. So at this point, it's just, you hit a wall and you don't know how else to deal with it. I mean, you're tired mentally, but physically, you've got energy. You just can't seem to find that level of efficiency you used to have.
Is that your take as well, Good?
No, I want to add to that. I view mental fatigue as like different levels, right? Like Dean's level is like, I'm just tired, right? And I need like a little week off or something to like reset, you know? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Dean, if you had a week off, would that reset you properly?
I would put myself into a small coma, but yeah, more or less.
Yeah, but I mean, like, essentially, however you reset, whether it's like bungee jumping or whether it's like sleeping for like a week, it that's your reset, right?
Yeah, like just quiet
Yeah,
time for my. with my reset.
Yeah. Right. So I have like I understand fatigue differently in terms of there's a level of mental fatigue where like you're literally just like every couple of months you need a little break for a while because it just like resets you, right?
Yeah,
But then there's also the level of mental fatigue where you're like, guy, I just don't want to do this no more, you know? Like
yeah,
I'm mentally fatigued to the point where if I do another one of whatever I do, right, I'm just going to like I'm gonna implode, right? um and I see that as different levels of fatigue. Like uh, but it's not only work related, you know. I think there's also mental fatigue in terms of life, right? So I keep doing the same thing every day, whether it's like uh, I wake up, I do my work, I eat, I do some exercise, and then I go to sleep, you know. And then you keep getting into the same thing, and then after a while your mind sort of just like gets tired of it, you know, and you don't enjoy it. It's where you doing something that you just don't necessarily enjoy, but you have to do it, right? And then you're tired of it, but you keep doing it because you have to do it, right? Essentially, you keep running yourself into the ground, and that's what I see as mental fatigue, right? Because you're just tired of doing the same thing over and over and over again, right?
Okay.
And like if you look at all those people that are like all those people that are like, no, I love my job, and they do, and the people that don't care how much they get paid because whatever they're doing is fun, right? That's passion. You rarely find that those people get mentally fatigued in their day jobs, right? Because everything is fun for them. Right, whereas we get tired of stuff and then we're like, oh, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. Because if you look at your job, it's not really what you want to do, right? I'm just using a job as an example, but there's other areas in your life, like um, uh, sometimes when I play games and stuff, there's only so many days you can play games before you get tired of it, you know.
yeah.
Or it's just one of those things where the repetition becomes tiring for you. And I see it as if the repetition is so much that you get tired of something, you've reached a point of mental fatigue, and you need a break from that. That's how I see it.
So one part is then is mind, right? So which we'll obviously delve into a bit later. So Dean mentioned some physical cues. I mean, and in part, it's the feeling, I guess, of tiredness and others. So
Mm.
what other, I guess, physical cues have any of you experienced when you're in this particular state? Besides tiredness, I guess lackluster performance, like Dean mentioned. What other physical cues have you all noticed within yourselves?
Depression, anger, irritation, frustration, um, all of those things
Is
that
it
are
is that all at once? Is it all at once, or is it
no, you can have them at
at
different
different
stages.
points?
Like some people get frustrated, right? But they won't necessarily be like sad about it. They'll just be upset, right?
Yeah.
And then some people are like, I'm just angry. Some people are just like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not angry, but I'm sad, because I can't get out of whatever I'm doing. And this is not necessarily job related. I mean, you can get mentally fatigued from relationships, man.
Yes.
Um, as an example, and you can be like, I'm just tired of being in the same relationship all the time because I'm not getting any joy from it,
Yeah.
you know. And you don't necessarily get frustrated by it, but you're sad about it because there's no way out, right? Unless you choose a way out.
Well, I mean, there's always a way out. I guess in that situation, to choose to
No, no,
to choose
but
to end
you
something that's
know,
not working for you.
yeah. No, but you know how some people are. They like they don't want to leave because they can't. They either scared or they can't find something else outside,
Yeah.
or they won't. They don't think they'll find anything better, or
Sure.
you know. I don't know. That's how I see it. Uh,
So I guess there's a lot of, I guess, feelings that you mentioned, and those are some things that perhaps you felt. Did you notice that it was more
every
or
day,
less
I think I
before?
cycle through
Well, I
those
mean, I
emotions
mean,
on a daily basis.
Regular Monday.
okay. I mean, I was actually going to ask, pre-COVID and during COVID, did you notice it more now, or what's the occurrences like before and during?
It took longer for me personally, it took a lot longer to get to the point during COVID than pre-COVID, because I used to hit the burnout
Mm,
periodically every year at a certain
mm,
time. Whereas with COVID, I think having that space and distance and space to myself meant that I wasn't as mentally drained. And maybe the answer to the first question you asked is what is mental fatigue? Is like mental fatigue for me, looking at it now as we're talking and discussing it, you have a reservoir of mental energy, and fatigue is when that reservoir is drained and you haven't
mm,
taken the time to fill it up again.
mm.
Um, and I find that my mental reservoir of energy was drained slower when I was not going into the office and, like dealing with a lot of people and stuff. So it took longer to get to that point. It's not like it didn't happen, it just took longer.
So you guys have mentioned, I guess you've touched on some of the causes that led you to some of those mental fatigue states. I mean, like y'all have mentioned, it's a lot of different things. But in your lives in particular, um, what are some of the ways that they have manifested themselves as? So you mentioned, for example, relationships, work, etc. But what are the other significant manifestations of this to cause you to break down, I guess?
Uh, I wouldn't say breakdown as such for me. It's just, okay, yeah, it is breakdown, right? Um, it happens for me, it happens in every avenue. Um, and it will happen in every avenue because I'm the type of person that I explore every avenue of my life as much as I can. But at some point, if you don't like continuously make breakthroughs, right, then it just becomes like a grinding sort of process, right? You can talk about relationships, you can talk about friendships, you can talk about family, you can talk about work, you can talk about exercise, you can talk about food. At some point, you're going to get tired of doing the same thing all the time, right? And
Hmm.
you need to take a break from stuff and then you can revisit it. It's not saying that whatever it is that you're dealing with is bad, right? It's just that uh, there's very few people that can do the same thing all the time, every day, their whole life, right? And even things that you have passions with will frustrate you sometimes because they're not easy, right? Like I love doing certain things. I like playing games. I like making pizza, whatever it is. But even at times, you get frustrated with stuff because it's like I'm hitting a wall, or I feel like I'm doing the same thing all the time, or I'm not progressing, or take a break because at some point you keep thinking the same way. Remember when we were doing designs and stuff at campus, you go take a break for a little while, even though like you didn't have to think about whatever it is that you're doing, and then you come back and you look at it with fresh eyes, right? And then all of a sudden you make a breakthrough. But that's how I see it. And like Dean is saying, with everything there's a sort of reservoir, right? And at some point that reservoir runs out. So it's sort of like you need to spend an appropriate amount of time with each thing, right? And then when you find that the reservoir is dropping low, go do something else. Actually, this reminds me, when I was seeing a psychologist, she said, listen, everything in your life is always going to have some sort of, as Dean says, some energy reservoir, right? Whether it's the thing that you love, right, or it's the thing that you hate. The thing that you love, the reservoir empties slower, right? The thing that you hate, the reservoir empties faster, right? And it's how you manage the time that you're spending with the things that you hate and the things that you love. If it's a thing that you hate, you'll naturally try to do it quicker, right? So you'll finish it quicker, right? But your reservoir will end faster. So if there's something that you hate, spend less time doing it, but do it more effectively, or as effectively as possible, and then spend more time doing the things that you like. So she actually encouraged me to do things like painting and spending time doing more things with my hands and being more creative, because it explores a side of you that allows, it fills up your cup in other avenues. So the things that you hated before would get filled up because you were spending more, your energy in that avenue would be replenished because you're spending more time doing something else that's a different part of your chemical brain, right?
Yeah, just on that, as you were saying it, something that came to mind is that another reason why your sort of reservoir energy reserves drains quicker when you have to do something that you don't want to do is a lot of people put off doing it, And it's sort of that procrastination, in a sense, kind of subtly drains energy without you realizing it. And then it gets even harder and harder to do the things you don't want to do. And then eventually, when you do it, you feel like you have no energy to do it, and you have to force yourself. And it's just like this vicious cycle that constantly drains you.
So I like that. I like that. There's that management plan that you've just mentioned there for things that I guess you find that are mentally draining or boring or whatever, where you do them as efficiently and effectively as possible in the shortest amount of time that you can spare, I guess, and then move on to things that excite you, where your reservoir is extended in those areas. So I think anyone listening, that's an incredible, I guess, example to use and to perhaps enact in their own lives. So are some people more prone to mental fatigue than others? Um, Weaker mindsets, maybe stronger mindsets versus stronger mindsets?
Did you want
Is
to
a
go?
powerlifter more prone to get tired quickly if he tries to do comrades than a long distance runner?
Sorry,
Yeah,
say
it's
again?
probably
So the analogy is like, is a powerlifter more prone to getting tired quicker if he tries to do like long distance running than a long distance runner, for example? Though anyway, my point is that if you're not geared to do something and you're needing to do it, and it's not something you naturally enjoy doing, it will defeat you quickly. And a lot of people find
yeah.
themselves in situations where they've got to do stuff, and if it's a have to, it's a grudge thing that they have to do. It's not a I want to do this. It's an I have to do this, and that's naturally going to deplete you a lot quicker than anyone who's enjoying life and doing things that they want to do.
It's the perfect answer, I think.
Yeah, that is.
I took a very long-winded approach, but yeah.
No. I mean, the statement that you made pretty much sums it up.
Yes.
Everybody's going to have mental fatigue in aspects of things that they're just not good at, or
Yeah, or
they're going to have
things that
quicker mental fatigue. Yeah,
yeah.
it's like spot on, literally. So to answer Yasha's question, yes, everybody has mental fatigue, and nobody's faster than anybody else. It just depends on what you're good at and what you're not good at, what you like doing and what you don't like doing.
Yeah.
That's true. I guess that I love that analogy as well. The weight, the power lifter and the comrades runner.
Money.
Well, one's carrying a
But
lot more weight than the
yeah,
other.
yeah. There is a lot of way to, oh. There is a way to counter that though. But it's like programming. You have to program yourself
When
to
you say
like
that?
stop. So you've all watched that video of Simon Sinek saying, I used to think of like giving speeches as like something that you fear, but if you look at the emotions for fear and the emotions for excitement, they're sort of the same, right? He says something about your hands get flustered, you start sweating, your heart rate goes up, right? They're the same experiences that you'll have when you're excited, right? And when you're scared of doing something. So what he said he did was, and I don't know if I can do this because I'm a bit of a, I'm one of those what will happen to me thing sort of people. But he said that what he did was basically anytime he felt fear to do something, he trained himself to understand that that is also the same as excitement. So now he basically every time he feels fear, he actually he taught himself to understand that that's excitement instead of fear. So he looks at it that way. So you program yourself in the avenue where you actually become this person that starts getting excited by doing stuff that they don't necessarily normally do. So you sort of cut through the reservoir stage and say, let me explore this as much as I can, right? And then if I'm bad at it, I can either choose to, like Joe Rogan says, I love doing stuff that I'm bad at because it allows me to push myself. So you can become one of those persons. So it's like tiered, right? You first have to get over the excitement. Then once you're there, you have to choose whether you like doing it or not. But some people like doing stuff they're good at, and some people like doing stuff that they're bad at. Some people like to improve, and some people like to become perfectionists. So it's like two aspects. But if you take the understanding that you'll never always be good at everything, but understand that fear is something that you can just mistreat for excitement or mistreat excitement for fear, then all of a sudden you sort of start cutting through those reservoirs of running out of energy quickly, and start spending time focusing on the things that you are doing.
I like that. I don't know how to
But
actually
it's
do it
simple.
for myself, but I quite like it.
It's simpler said than done. It's like That's why I said it's difficult, because you have to program yourself. You have to literally be one of those people that consistently throws himself into difficult scenarios, right? And then learns how to adapt to them while he's doing it. But even if you shit and you make a mistake, it's better that you did it that you didn't do it. But you have to be one of those people that likes to throw himself into those scenarios, or herself.
And then does that particularly help with? I know you mentioned fear and excitement, but does that particularly help with um, the feeling of that draining feeling?
Yeah, so the fatigue comes in when, like we said, you've exhausted all the energy that you can in an avenue,
Hmm.
right? And I think it will help initially, right? It'll initially help you gauge how much energy you can have for something that you're going to do. But eventually you will get fatigued. If you're going to do something brand new, right? Say, for example, I uh, love playing chess, right? And you don't love playing chess, or you're new to chess. I'm going to beat you 50 times out of 50 the first 50 games we play, right? It's up to you to decide whether you have the penchant to actually continue, right? And mental fatigue comes in after that, where I'm going to learn as much as I can about chess, right? And then I'm going to beat the other guy, right? Because I'm new. Then you go and you start learning about chess, but at some point you become tired of it because you're like, there's only so much I can learn. And then I go play him, and then I lose 27 times out of 30, right? Then you're like, okay, I'm still mentally fatigued. But how you get over that is like you have to take a break, go back to it, practice. Take a break, go back to it, practice. But the mental fatigue doesn't come in initially. It comes in after spending enough time with something that you're like, I need a break from this, otherwise I'm going to run into a wall, and then I'm just going to run into the ground, right? Some people may not have mental fatigue in that aspect because they're so determined, but I find it rare that someone doesn't get tired of doing something all the time.
Is that
Actually, I
fatigue
mean,
or saturation?
I would say saturation, probably.
I mean,
but
I don't
then I
actually know the
mean,
difference
are
in
they
this
closely
context.
related then? Could they
Yeah,
be
I mean, is
closely
it is
related? I
it two
mean,
sides of
for
the same
example,
coin?
we might be thinking it's saturation when it's actually mental fatigue. I mean, one person's definition of mental fatigue could include saturation, to a point.
Yeah, maybe I see it as mental fatigue, but it might be saturation. To me, they're the same.
Hmm. So now you mentioned going down like a spiral sort of thing. What are the consequences of a fatigued mind? What are the consequences of constantly beating your head against a wall sort of thing?
Rubbish
What
performance.
is
Yeah,
There's, there's
mistakes,
rubbish.
mistakes.
is
Yep,
that
that's
okay?
true.
So remember, we're dealing with there's a wide variety of things here, right? There's work, there's relationships, there's etc. 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 So do you want to speak to each of those topics? Like, for example, work first, and then relationships, and then the other factors, the other portions of life?
Yeah, so I think work is simple. Dean explained it's like performance, right? You're just gonna be like, no, I don't want to do this today. I'm gonna take as long as I can to do something, and it's gonna take me forever because I'm just not there mentally, and I don't want to do this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
that's fair. In friendships and relationships, it's sort of similar, you know. I mean, you don't give the people in your life the time because you're sort of avoiding spending more time with them because you're frustrated being around them, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or you're fatigued being around them because you can't maintain those energy levels all the time.
For
Right.
me, the friendship and family one's complicated because, like, the work one is fairly straightforward. You know, there's a performance issue. I can see that my level of problem solving isn't as high as it normally is. I take longer to do things. My answers are less creative. There's You can write down all the things, right? But it's fairly cut and dry. Um, Whereas with the family and friends thing, it's more. there's not as much enthusiasm, and like Prashant's saying, that you don't want to or you can't necessarily give as much as you normally want to. And with that also comes, feelings of pressure and guilt that you can sometimes feel like, like maybe I should try and do more, or maybe I should be more present, or maybe a little bit more enthusiastic, or, I wish I had more energy to do this. And that's a lot harder to deal with.
Well, I have a question.
Mhm.
So, do you see? Is there the element of wanting in mental fatigue, or is mental fatigue to you something where there's no wanting, or does wanting play a part? Right. So, if you understand what I mean, or should I just give you an example?
I know what you mean.
Hmm.
It's not that I don't want to perform. It's just that I feel like I can't. I feel spent, and it's like I want to do more. Like the want is there. It's the ability to do more seems to be removed or curtailed heavily.
Okay, so does wanting play a part in mental fatigue, or is wanting the underlier of mental fatigue, or is wanting the underlier of saturation? Because then there's a clear definition between the two.
I see where you're going with this, but I think with saturation, there's no want. But with at least, okay, the way I see it, right? When I'm saturated, I don't want to do more. Whereas mental fatigue, I want to do more. I just feel like I can't.
So wanting is actually in okay. So the act of wanting is in saturation and not in fatigue. Because whether you want to or not in fatigue, you can't. But whether you want to or not in saturation, you can.
Okay, but in fatigue, you
Yes.
want. In saturation, you don't.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is that in fatigue, whether you want to or you don't want to, you can't, right? So wanting is removed from the scenario.
No, I don't agree with that, because
I'm
the
looking at
want
it
is
as like as
the
an
primary.
and or situation. Whether you want to or you can't, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So wanting is essentially irrelevant,
The
right?
answer is
Whereas
want.
with with saturation, I want to or I don't want to. But if I want to, then I'll somehow end up doing it. If I don't want to, I'm gonna stretch it out as long as I can before I actually end up doing anything.
I hear what you're saying.
You know?
In one scenario, you can't, and in one scenario, you can, but you have a
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah, you have a choice. So choice is essentially the difference between fatigue and saturation, right? So if you have the element of choice in doing something and you can't do it, essentially you're fatigued in that avenue.
Yes, but the thing is, with fatigue, it's a strange one because it's. I don't know if I say I. If you absolutely say you can't, it's just like I feel like I can't.
Yeah. So
I
no,
mean, I
but if you
feel
feel like you can't, but you
before.
can, then it's a choice, right?
Well, I don't. It's
It's
hard. Okay, so hang on.
I'm just
We'll
yeah.
use work as an example, right? I still have deliverables. I still have deadlines. They don't go away.
Hmm.
And even though I feel like I can't, you end up pushing yourself and you meet your deadlines and you get through the work. But you
Hmm.
feel really, really spent at the end. It's not a case of, I'm making a choice not to do something. I'm actually making a choice to do something. Whereas in saturation, you make a choice not to do something.
Yeah, so the way I see it is okay. I understand exactly what you're saying, right? I think we're just on different sides of the same coin because the way I see it is you saturated, right? But you can push yourself. Whereas if you're fatigued, right? Literally, no matter what you try to do, you're mentally broken. You can't do anything.
Yeah, I think that's complete and utter fatigue. Like you talked
Yeah,
about earlier, levels to it. I mean, when you
yeah,
reach
yeah,
a
yeah,
point
yeah.
in
Sure.
nothing you can do, you can't make the person do anything. At that point, you
Yeah,
just potato.
yeah. But isn't that what we consider fatigue, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's when you've reached the limit of fatigue and there's nowhere else to go.
So essentially, the level of the two levels within fatigue is saturation first, and then fatigue after that.
I still feel like they're different, but they each have different levels. Like you
Yeah.
reach a level of fatigue where you're able to still push through, but you get diminishing returns, and then you reach the wall where you just cannot, no matter whether you want to or not, doesn't really matter. You just, like you said, the want is removed at that point. You can't do anything further.
Yeah.
Whereas with saturation, I don't know what that wall looks like. Like you cannot take on anymore.
Mm.
I mean,
So
while we're talking,
it
so
basically comes down to choice at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, but if you hit complete fatigue, you don't really have a choice, do you?
But that's what I mean, right? So if we're talking about the scale of fatigue, right, from 1 to 100, right, anywhere along the line between 0 and 99, there's choice, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
100 is fatigue, right? So if we remove saturation from the equation, the only other difference is choice, right? Because the end of the line for saturation is the same end of the line for fatigue. So they essentially did the same item. But
Well, is
if
it?
you're talking about, well, I would, if we're looking at it that way, and the only underlier becomes choice, because there's like two different things, right? I'm running a race, right? And I can run, but I'm laboring and I'm out of breath, right? And I just don't want to do this anymore. So I'm like, okay, I'm done. I want to stop, right? Then there's the other guy who's like, I'm going to run no matter how much air I have left and no matter how much energy I have left, but he still doesn't reach the finish line because his legs cramp and he can't run.
Well, which one is that?
So that's fatigue to me, right? Whereas saturation is like, okay, I'm reaching this point where I've just reached saturation, but I don't want to break the ceiling.
So that's like the person saying, "I've had enough of the race, but I'm not
Yeah,
tired."
yeah. I'm not tired. I'm just like one aspect of me is not tired, but I've exacerbated like my breath and like my willingness to do something. So my choice to do something. But technically, I haven't run myself into ruin. Like my legs aren't cramping.
I don't know. I'm still not 100% clear on this, to be honest. Like, I think I
Yeah,
understand fatigue
I
well.
yeah, yeah.
I feel like it's the person has the capacity to do more, but when they hit the wall, they make a choice to call it quits and be like, you know what,
Yeah.
I'm not getting anywhere. I have the energy to do it. I just don't want to. Where like with saturation, it's almost coming from a place of privilege, where you say I don't want to do anymore. Like I can, but I just don't feel like I want to. Whereas with fatigue, is just you it's a place of lack. Like I do not have
Yeah.
the energy to do this, and if I need to force myself, then I'm pulling energy from somewhere else, and I can get it done.
So
But I'm
that's how I see it as well. That's essentially how I see it as well. But I see saturation as sort of a I need to break the barrier before I can continue, whereas fatigue is I can't break any more barriers. I'm done.
yeah, like I've got to borrow resources to carry on.
Yeah, correct. I need other legs to run. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I do agree with you in that sense. So saturation is sort of you can get saturated, but you can break the ceiling. Whereas fatigue is fatigue, and I'm done after that. I can't. I'm like my tires are falling.
yeah.
You know. Yeah. I agree with that then.
One is exhaustion and one is boredom.
Essentially, yes, right? So
It's
another
a
word for mental fatigue is mental exhaustion, right? So that's
yeah.
the right word, right? So yeah, I think that's the way it should be viewed. But I don't know. Look, we're not pros at this, right?
I
But then
mean,
that's
we have different views on this whole thing. I mean, like,
Mm.
um, for example, I'm going to throw in my view of saturation, and I'm going to use an analogy here of water and sugar. You can add, um, you can keep adding teaspoons of sugar to water, and there'll be a point where there'll be more sugar than water can absorb, and that to me is saturation.
You can still create
Okay.
caramel.
Dean, I'm not talking about caramel here. I'm talking about cold water, and so this thing. So for me, that's saturation, where you can try and add more things in, but nothing's going to get absorbed, and you can't. There's nothing at that point any further. Um, so that's my definition of saturation, and then fatigue. It's very similar to what Prash just mentioned as well.
But then what's your evaluation of fatigue in that scenario of sugar and water?
Okay, so in that scenario, so I just explained saturation. Mine
Yeah.
is I just don't, I won't add any more sugar to the water at that point. Once I've reached my saturation point, I'm done right there and
Okay,
then.
so you view them as a couple things. So once you've reached saturation, you've essentially reached fatigue. But
Yes,
not
because
adding
because
more is
at
fatigue.
that point, I know that limit. So in my situation, then I know the limit. Um, I can
It sounds
protect
like
myself from going
it
beyond
sounds
it.
like one is how much you can take in, and one is how much you can dish out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I would
as well.
actually. I think
Yes, yes,
that's probably
yes.
the best way you've summed it up. One is
Yeah.
basically internal, one is external, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. But that's like I said, we have three analogies on how we arrive at what our definitions are for fatigue and things like that.
I think I like the last one, which is a combination of all of them. But yeah,
Yeah,
it makes
true.
it really does make the most sense, because if you look
Yeah.
at it from an internal point of view, I've reached my saturation limit from an internal point of view. I'm fatigued. I can't keep going. That's the external point of view.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's helpful in that sense because then you can at least label whatever it is you have, and then you know what the course of action is. One is to either, I mean, if you're fatigued, you have to rest, but if you're saturated, then you either change the cup, or you add heat, or you add more water. There's things that you can do, like you can
Essentially,
give
yes.
a different
Yeah.
perspective to continue going.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're fatigued, then there's a different remedy that you need to apply.
Yeah. I
Okay, so
agree with that.
before we touch on the on that what you just mentioned now, Dean, so keep that in the back of your pocket.
Hmm.
What's the absolute disaster state for a person who's completely fatigued? And
Jeez.
Dean, you mentioned you hibernate, so that which means you perhaps experienced extreme fatigue before. What did that look like for you, and what is that extreme state?
You don't want to deal with anything or anyone. You just need peace and quiet for yourself. Like you kind of lock yourself. Well, I say you. I mean myself. You lock yourself away, and you just do whatever you need, or whatever you. It's a very almost like an intuitive thing. Like you sleep as much as you feel like you need to sleep. You don't necessarily eat in a particular fashion. You just eat whatever you want at that point. It's like your decision making goes into comfort mode, complete comfort mode. And then after that, you're going to go, okay, well, what do I need for myself now? Do I need to go take a walk? Do I need to go watch a movie? What do I need to do for myself to get myself moving again? Um, and then,
What's that?
you
What's
kind of,
that? What's that length of time, and what's or is if it even is time related,
it's
and
not for me.
or what's that
Um,
feeling related, or like how long do you think, or how long have you needed in the past, and what is that trigger for you to move, particularly out of that state?
so it's hard to measure the exact time because you kind of hit that fatigue, and then you hit a maintenance level between, like, so it was always, we call it, like where I work at an ad agency. We call like the September October period like purgatory, because you're not quite at December, but you're still got like a couple of busy periods ahead of you, so you're kind of in no man's land.
Mm.
So you got to figure out, how do I get through purgatory? um, and it's about just planning so that you can deliver whatever you need to and hit December. And then from December, you go into recovery mode. And usually by January, I'm fine. Um, when in January, that tends to vary. Uh, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, you need separation from the environment. So for me, it was, drive down to Durban, see the family, go to the beach. The beach does a lot of work. My goodness, just like being at the ocean, like the most relaxing thing, the smell of that salt in the air. I don't know how, but it just fixes stuff on the inside.
Mhm.
It's difficult to explain, but anyone who's been through this and has gone to the beach for sanctuary knows exactly what I'm talking about. Seeing family, seeing friends, catching up with people without the knowledge of, or without know, like, innately that I don't have to go to work on Monday. Like, we're all on leave, and the priority is actually just to spend time, catch up with each other, and relax. Go to Bry's. There's usually a congestion of football fixtures, which is fantastic. We all sit around the couch and shout at the TV at once, which is nice. There's a bunch of things that you go through as a healing process or as a recovery process, and that kind of resets you. And then, as you know that that's drawing to a close, and you drive back to Joburg, you're kind of in the frame of mind like, okay, I've recovered, I'm ready, I'm excited for whatever the new year has to offer. There's also a lot of positive energy around resolutions. I know that tends to fall off a cliff towards the end of January, but at that moment in time, everyone's feeling optimistic and happy.
And is that the same for with you, Prash, or similar
No,
train of events even? Mm.
no. I think that it's very different for different people. Like some
Yeah.
people, when they get when they get to the point of like complete tiredness or whatever, I'm somebody that like takes days off to like um, clean my house and like um, I don't necessarily sleep more. I actually sleep less because I'm up doing stuff. I'll go do things that are fun for me, right? I think it's I think it's more of each person has their own space. Like Dean says, he has his own space. He goes to the beach. He goes spends time with his family. That is his reservoir refiller, right? Other people have different reservoir refillers. I like to clean my house. Yes, spending time with my family is one of them, but I necessarily don't sleep more. I actually sleep less. And I do more stuff with my time because I feel like the more time I have doing stuff that's creative, the more I fill my spare time and my mental energy. And I actually have more energy doing the stuff that um, I enjoy, then I need to sleep less, right? So recharging myself is actually sort of counterintuitive because I don't need to like rest to gain energy. I need to do stuff that's more creative to gain energy, right? So it's different for different people. And I feel like every person needs to know what replenishes them and what drains them, and then know the play between the two. So when you find that you're too drained, go and do something that replenishes you. And I think that's probably how I see it, right? And I think Dean's example of going to the beach and like spending time in a place where he can like think about all the stuff and then absorb it, right? And then like get mental closure for it and then put it behind him so that whatever comes in front of him he can deal with.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
there's
pretty
there's
accurate.
very degrees, right? I mean, like Dean's social oriented in some instances, whilst you are
Yeah,
solo oriented. Um, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
just you mentioned something actually quite cool there, which is dealing with challenges, I guess, or actually putting them to rest, and then waiting things that are in front of you. Um,
yeah,
which
because
is quite interesting.
how are you going to address the fatigue if you don't mentally deal with it?
Yes.
You
So
can't just ignore
it's not
it.
actual
You
mental
have to
Yeah,
acknowledge,
downtime.
yeah.
It's not like
yeah,
just brain drain
yeah,
sort of thing where you
yeah.
just do dumb things.
Yeah.
You
Dean's
don't
not going home
evolve.
and then yeah, Dean's not going home and forgetting about all the problems that he had, right? He
Yeah.
goes home, he still got it in his mind, but he like closes the book on all those things, right? One by one. And then once they're closed, he can spend time with his family, go and smell the salt of the earth, like he says, right? And then when he comes back, he's refreshed. There's other people who like go away for a holiday, get completely smashed for 2 weeks, and come back, and it's like, woe is me, my life is back to normal, right? That is not dealing with your saturation and your fatigue. That is literally just ignoring the problem. That's worse, right?
Yeah, they'll come back at you if you don't.
Yeah, because you essentially just put everything on hold for 2 weeks, which is worse.
Yeah, you just covered it with a big blanket and it's like, I'm gonna finish.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like an ostrich with the head in the sand.
Yeah, I can't see you, you can't see me, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a problem. That I see as a problem.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I'm different from Dean. I sleep less. I I do more by myself.
I mean, you just mentioned like your psychologist said, be more creative.
Yeah, well,
Um,
she used to push me in that avenue because she was like, "Listen, you're not exploring your creative." Because like as an engineer, most of the time it's math, science, um, designs, reports. It's all analytical stuff, right? And
mhm,
as an engineer, you don't get to explore that normally creative side. Yes, you get to do innovation, right? But it's not like you get to go and draw and spend time in nature and like write poetry or read a book or well, you read textbooks, but you don't get to read like books about
mhm.
the stuff that you like. So if you don't get that aspect of
The Lord of the
creativeness,
Rings.
yeah, everything is left brained, right? When everything is left brained, if
Yes.
you don't spend time on the right hand side, it's like you're literally playing with half your powers, your half your emotions, half your chemistry. What's the word? Um, No, we can use
capacity.
chemistry. I'm thinking of like your creative side has your hormones, that's the word. So you only playing with half your hormones, and that becomes a problem because when you have a hormone imbalance, naturally you become fatigued faster, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Mm.
No, I was, I was 100% leading down the brain part there, and utilization of the correct areas of your brain.
Yeah.
You know, I picture, for example, if anyone can picture, I guess, a map of the brain and a live MRI scan. And when doctors ask you questions to stimulate different parts of your brain, it's exactly the same thing.
Mm.
When you're asked a question about what makes you happy, then one part of your brain lights up and things like that. So stimulating different parts of your brain is exceptionally healthy. And what your psychologist was actually suggesting was you working on those areas to bring that balance
Mm,
to
mm,
your life.
mm. You need that though.
Yes,
It,
no,
it's
100%
it's.
agree with that.
I didn't know. You see, like I didn't think about things like that back then, right? So I never viewed balance as something that like everybody needs, right? I always viewed it as this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm going to keep doing, right? And a lot of people say double down on your strengths and stuff, which is fine, right? But there's only so much you can double down on your strength until you reach that point, right? Where you like, I'm at a wall, I need a break, right? So doubling down on your strengths is great, but you need balance. Just like we said the last discussion, as much as you enjoy the happiness stuff, you must also experience the sad stuff, right? It's the same with your hormones and your emotions, but also your fatigue levels. You must go in the opposite direction because if you don't, you basically pulling one side of yourself and the other side is staying where it is. It's like being those guys that arm wrestle and they only use their right arm. You see those have like huge right biceps but no left bicep, right? It's the same
Yeah,
thing. You
definitely.
you completely building muscles on one side, and the other side is
Right.
like flattened to hell, right? And that sort of you're not using your full powers.
So then, I
Yeah.
mean, it's just training yourself then to be an all-rounder, and then somehow know your limits. So how can you train yourself to know your limits for your fatigue states?
Do you want to go for it or? I
I
no,
know, I know
I
that's
mean,
I have an
perhaps
answer.
a difficult one, right?
No,
Because
no, I
we,
have an answer.
you,
It's simple. It's
yeah,
six.
yeah.
You just keep going until you're tired of something, and then you go to something else. It's literally that. You'll find that,
doesn't that sound saturation though?
yeah, but that's it. That's exactly what it is. You with work, right?
Okay, so
So
saturation then is your key indicator before fatigue.
for me, either way, if you find fatigue
Yes.
and saturation as a point, right, whether it's internal or external, right, sometimes you can hit internal before you hit external. You know that. Someone can keep giving you work, but you reach fatigue first, right? Or someone can give you as much work as you want, right? Or they can load you and you only 50% loaded, but you like, how am I saying this? I'm saying this the wrong way around, aren't I?
I've had enough of this sort of thing.
I've
Yeah,
had
I
enough
get
of
what you're
this.
saying.
You can give me as much as you want, but I've had enough of it, right? I've had enough of it in the first
Mm.
5%, right? So
Yes.
it's for me, it's whether you reach your saturation of fatigue, but it's in every avenue. But you must swing, you must use the seesaw, right? So if you go to the left hand side where you always do work, right? When you get tired of doing work, go spend some time doing the other thing, right? If it's a drawing, I like doing puzzles, right? Because they have colors, they have shapes. It's creative for me, and it's not using the left hand side of my brain. So puzzles and stuff like that. Yes, it's analytical, but it's not to the point where I'm working out numbers. It's I'm putting one shape into another shape, right? So it's me visually accepting something. And it allows me mental downtime, right, to not have to deal with the number stuff. So that when I go back to the number stuff, and this is the cool thing about the human brain, is that when you take a break from something, it's just like any other muscle, it grows. So the next time you do it, you have more penchants to do something.
Hmm.
right? So
Agreed.
like muscles when you train in the gym, I spend 10 hours doing work, right? I'm not saying that you're going to at some point be spending 3 days doing work. That's not the thing, obviously. You'll still reach fatigue before that. But um, it's like I can do 10 and a half hours worth of work before I get tired of it because you've emotionally allowed yourself to grow at both sides.
Hmm.
That's the way I see it, right?
Do you see that as well, Teen? Is it the same for you?
So, what was the actual question? It was around how do you know your limits, right? Or how do you find them?
Or how do you train yourself to find that limit firstly, and then recognize the cue, and then shift.
Um, okay, so I've never viewed a limit as something that was set in stone. A limit is movable, right? It's a limit today is not the same as a limit tomorrow. You can expand that capacity. So fatigue is a marker that always moves, and you can hit fatigue quicker on some days because the reservoir has been empty for a while, but the reservoir can continuously grow, and you just need to spend more time filling it up. Um, Regarding saturation, that limit there, for me, that is again still a choice. It's a choice of me not wanting to do it because maybe there's not enough value coming out of it, or I don't feel like it's something that I just personally want anymore, and then I've just had enough of it, and I just need to take a step back.
Hmm.
Whereas with fatigue, there it's something that I either want or need to continue doing, but I am unable to for whatever reason. And that limit, uh, I mean, it's something I feel like you'll know it when you hit it. But how to go past it, I think the more important thing is knowing how to fill up your reservoir rather than expand the thing first. It's like you got to know how to replenish. And then once you've gotten that pat down, then you look at how to expand that reservoir.
And I guess filling up that reservoir for everyone is, like Prash said, is personal, and for them to figure that out, right? But are there
Yeah.
any tips that you can think of to finding that, I guess, peace or zen, or you know
Well, it doesn't have to be peaceful Zen. I've seen people fill up their reservoir by
no,
going
no,
into
I mean with
complete nothing.
anything, like with chaos or whatever, it doesn't matter. But like,
Yeah.
what's the tips to help people find that for
look
themselves?
at what look at what you naturally seem to have energy for. Like look at what you'll get energy for. Like you could be the most lethargic you've ever been, lying on the couch hating life, but if something comes along you will get up full of excitement, get dressed, get out. Whatever that thing is, whether it's a concert, whether it is Formula
Shopping.
One, whether it's shopping, it could be shopping, it could be fishing. Like I do not enjoy getting up early in the morning for money or
We all
love,
know
but
this.
yes, you guys have been witness to this. Gooch lived with me; he knows this.
Mhm.
But if there's an opportunity to go fishing on a Saturday or Sunday morning, I'm up at 4. No questions asked. No ritual sacrifice needed. I'm there, right? Because I mean, somehow the energy reservoir, there's a different one that opens, and it's like, oh, here we go. So there's always something that you can find that'll give you energy, that'll trigger you into a response that will, like all of a sudden you have a bottomless pit of energy for.
Yeah.
Find those things.
Okay. Any tips from your side, Prash?
No, no, I can't actually beat that. To be honest with you, that's exactly what I would have said.
Yeah,
You need to find the things that are,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's exactly it.
Like Guj and I would actually sometimes we would just make time to actually just have a conversation because we know when we're completely brain dead,
Yeah,
and then
Yeah.
we just phone the other one and we have a conversation. And after that, we're like, okay, we shall,
yeah,
because it's an
yeah.
exciting conversation.
But that's our one of our ways of replenishing energy.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. Talking things out, feeding off each other.
Sometimes it's not even
talking
that.
about
Sometimes it's just talking
it.
shit because when you like when you're talking about the same stuff and you agree on the same, like yesterday we were talking about football, right? And even though we were talking about an incident that happened, we were both like talking about it from our viewpoints, and you'll find that naturally the conversation will keep going because it's like interesting for us.
Yeah, because the other person has a perspective you don't see.
Yeah, yeah,
And like that's valuable because now you've created a new neural pathway because now you're seeing something you never previously saw.
yeah.
So like it's your brain has grown or developed because of it.
But that's
Or
that. It's
engagement
key.
with
Yeah.
with another person and a different viewpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so key what Dean says. You need to find those things that you enjoy, right? And I continuously try to do stuff that's, even if you adapt something that you like doing to something else that you like doing. So you don't have to go like, I'm going to try bungee jumping, whereas I actually enjoy playing games online, right? So that's, do an adaptation. So I try a different form of game, or try a different form of mental requirement that's similar to the one that you have. You'll find that there's different avenues that you can go down, because going in an extreme, yes, you might find enjoyment in thrilled sports or whatever it is, but it's also, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying like you generally, if you find something that you like, other things that you like are also around that thing. You know?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Adjacent activities.
Essentially, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Agree with that completely.
Does it, what that was, that the answer to the question?
I don't know. We
I forgot the
tangent
question.
pretty hard there. It's deviated so hard.
Mentally fatigued. Yeah.
Yeah, man. To my,
Yash loves to track though.
Yash,
Yeah.
Yash caught us on
Definitely.
it. Like even now, Yash caught us. Yash caught me so off guard today.
I didn't wait
I
for those
did. I did
questions.
give you a few days warning. That this is going to be today.
Yeah, you know we need reminders, man.
Oh man, I'm not a physical reminder, dude.
Yash likes
By
candid
the
stuff.
way,
Though.
you'll have answered all the questions that I had. I had about 11 of them, and through the discussions, you'll actually answered all of them.
You
So,
check that efficiency.
so
I mean,
what?
your answers were to the point and to the cue, so
No, we were
it was
figuring
pretty
out some
good.
shit there too, but um,
Yeah.
I would say, I think, you have, what is your points of mental fatigue? Because I can tell you clearly, there's probably 3 or 4 times in my life where I've just reached complete mental fatigue, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that most people that are like sort of very self aware or learning to be self aware, they've reached points of mental fatigue naturally. People that have
Yeah.
turned their lives around or changed things about themselves for the better, right? Those
Yeah.
those to me, people have reached points of fatigue, right? Remember, fatigue doesn't have to be a thing. It can also be emotional, right? So you've reached the
Yes.
point of, and it doesn't have to be external either. I've reached the point within myself that I'm tired of looking at myself this way. And I need to change this thing about myself so I can look at myself in a different light. That is fatigue. You've
Hmm.
reached a,
Yes.
you've exacerbated this negative feeling within yourself.
Hmm.
Right? That's a point of fatigue, right? So I can
Yeah.
tell you maybe at least 3 or 4 points in my life that I've reached mental fatigue or some level of fatigue, right? Mostly mental, because I mean, internal stuff very nearly always is mental, but um, I've reached that point and I can turn around. But like, can you name the points in your life where you have? And you'll find that most of them involved quite big turnarounds.
Yes. Um, I can say two in the most recent past, which I mean, for me was more recent, really. And both of them, I guess, were emotional fatigue factors to me. Not actually, getting extraordinarily tired of the particular emotions that I was feeling at that time. They were just
Yeah.
completely also very draining to me as well. Like draining to the point where I would be up but still remain in bed, such that this entire emotional state would just leave me without energy because it was consuming so much of my, well, my physical energy
Mm.
to stay in that emotion, sort of thing. um, and I grew completely tired of that. And that was, and I said, enough's enough. And at that point, that was, for me, my Q factor was that my energy was completely drained from my body. So for me, I would never let myself go to that point again. I remember earlier in this podcast, I said I had I had cues that I learned, and that was one of the cues that came out from it. For me, that was that one. And the second one was a mental, I guess, stopping point, where I used to notice when I used to get really, really brain bogged in whatever I was doing. It could have been work, it could have been discussions with people, discussions with friends, family, or even just hobby stuff. One of the fatigue states that I noticed and triggered a change within me was literally pulling my hair out as one of my fatigue states.
Mm.
And the moment I noticed that, I was like, okay, cool. This is what it leads to for me, um, and I need to change this. And it's exactly like how you both mentioned, where once you notice it, you move toward doing something else, um, either either in another area in the completely opposite. So those are the two most recent ones that I can think of. Happened, I guess, this year even. In fact, um, yeah.
Okay. Um, I had a couple follow up questions, but it's more around what did you do to fix the thing, and is putting control mechanisms always a good thing?
Good
Okay,
question.
so I'm going to answer the second one first. Control mechanisms, for me, in previous podcasts, I mentioned that I didn't have a very structured life and lifestyle and things like that. So a structured way of living suits me in particular. So putting controls and measures in place so that I live a particular way helps me. It works for me. Now, that's not to say that everything goes according to plan. There'll always be zigzags in the road, meanders, and whatever in your path that come your way, and your controls and measures might fail. And then at some point, to those who don't live a structured life, that might throw chaos and whatever into their lives. It doesn't for me, because I've learned to add some leeway and breathing room with regards to those controls and measures and things like that. So for me, it works. Having that structure works in my life, right? So that's the second one.
Mm.
Second question, kind of answered. I'm not sure if I did completely. And the first one, could you just repeat that because I think I forgot it.
So what did you do to, like, you've obviously gone through that point, right? And you said,
Yeah.
I know that I'm never going to reach that point again, right? So you've
Yes.
obviously
Yeah.
put some sort of mental control system in there, right? But what did
Yeah.
you do to rectify the issue? Like I say, I do puzzles and stuff like that. What do you do? What do you do that like replenishes that side?
Oh, and it's also creative. So I also do quite creative things. I also do things that I like doing.
Mm.
So I'll give you a very good example. It's my 3D printing area.
Yeah.
Um, Whenever I'm in a particular state, I tend to just wake up, walk over to my 3D printing area, and pick up one of my 3D prints um, that I'm currently busy with, and just work on that for a bit. And I find that that's something that's extraordinarily exciting to me. Replenishes my side and gives me a new drive to go back and continue what initially caused me to get into that state in the first place. So it's
Okay.
not dissimilar to what each both of you have said.
Okay.
So, do you ever find so you're actually designed life so that you never hit a limit? You just like you hit the orange zone before the red zone, and then you go, okay, I got to dial it back down.
Mm.
I got to fix it.
Yeah, yeah. I built those indicators into me. It's taken some time, obviously, because you need to hit the limit first in order to
Yeah.
recognize it and what
Yeah.
those cues are along the way.
Mm.
And I've documented it. So I've actually written it down. One of my things is always to write things down somewhere.
Okay.
Um, I was in this
That's a
state at
healthy
this
practice.
time,
Keep
and what was the timeline that drove me there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
So-
very good way to stay conscious of what's happening in your life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my memory shit. I should do that.
We should all do that.
No, but
And yeah,
like I
like
said, I built those structures in because my life was pretty unstructured before, so it just works for me in particular. Like I said,
I think it will
like
work
life
for a lot
throws
of
stuff
people.
at you, but it's okay with me.
I think it will work for a lot of people, but I think it takes a lot of discipline to do what you do, and a lot of people don't have that discipline or are not willing to commit to that level of structure.
It's individual,
Because
right? I
we've seen
mean,
what you managed to accomplish because of your structure, and it's remarkable. But it also there's a certain level of sacrifice required to achieve it.
Yeah, it's sort of like I am not going to make. I'm going to promise myself that I'm not going to be fool me once, fool me twice sort of person, right? I'm not going to make the same mistake
Yeah.
again, right?
Yeah.
And I've learned from my mistakes, so I'm not going to do that again.
there's a nice saying by Gaur Gopal Das, and he says, you don't laugh at the same joke twice. So why do you experience the same problems over and over again?
I laugh at the same joke twice. Shit, that's bad. I do. What do you mean? I see.
But okay, so you don't laugh at the same joke repeatedly. Let's just not use twice.
I've done that too. You know when you're laughing at something and then you repeat the joke and you're like ha 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 all over again.
Okay, that saying's lost on YouTube.
This
Never
Gar
mind.
Gopal Das. No, but I get exactly what you're saying, right? So you don't hear the same joke for the first time twice. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I get it. Yeah. I don't know. I think I've discussed this with Yash before, but you can use fatigue to benefit you as well, right? In some ways.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I learned this from someone that was like, I wouldn't say she was a psychologist. I used the wrong word earlier. She was basically like a mentor sort of thing, right? And she's very experienced. She knows life. She's done like self-help and stuff like that for other people. So I sort of got like lucky with that. But she always like explained stuff to me and I picked up on it. But she said one thing, because I was at the stage in my life where I was like, do I really want to work here now? Do I want to stay? Do I want to leave? And she was like, listen, what do you like doing? So I was at that point in my life was like, I know I like doing certain things, but are they really my passion? And at that point I wasn't like, I wasn't a person who loved cooking. I love cooking now. It's a passion of mine. I like reading a lot of past historians and stuff like that and what they said and all of that. This is a passion of mine, right? But she was like, what are your passions? And I'm like, well, she's like, what do you do for fun, right? So I was like, I play games. So she's like, here's the thing that you should do, right? Whatever you're doing that you find insanely fun, right? Do it until you are completely broken, right? Right? So take whatever it is that you're doing, right? So what is the thing that you enjoy doing, Dean? What is it that you enjoy doing? Right, that you can do now.
Like right now, dude.
Yeah, well, say this weekend. Give me something that you can do this weekend.
Don't say watching Liverpool win or something like that.
Yeah. It must be something that you can continuously do, right? You can do over and over again. If it's watching Liverpool
win.
No, that's fine. If you can do that, then you must pick all the Champions League games that they have and start from the morning and watch it till you die, right? When I say die, I mean mentally you can't watch another game before you fall asleep. That's what I'm saying, right? Completely break yourself, right? So what is something that you enjoy doing?
I was gonna say like a recent example. I know, okay, recent's not a good word, but something a few months ago. I really, because of Prashant, I was watching Fairy Tale. It's an anime, and that's something. If I didn't stop myself, I would have just continued
Oh my
watching.
God, you are so addicted now to Fairy Tale.
No, but okay, that's fine, right? That's fine, right? So what I would say is there would have to be some point within the day where you just couldn't keep your eyes open anymore, right? You'd have to call it at that point.
I made the choice when the sun was coming up that it was probably a healthy decision to sleep.
Right. So, okay, fine. Right. Okay, pick something that actually involves mental activity, right? Because what you're doing now is you're binging, right? Now, binging is easy, right? Pick something that has mental activity, right?
Fairy Tale is very mental because they built so much into that story.
Okay, fine.
Like,
right? But
Hiroshima put so many thinking points in there that it was just like when you're watching it, you're not passively watching it, you're actively watching it because there's
And you're
always things that
completely
keep
involved.
referring back.
Okay,
Like
fine.
for example, Dean identifies with look at his statuses on WhatsApp. Look at the amount of fairy tale statuses on WhatsApp these past months, Coach.
I only see Liverpool. That's all I see.
There's been news on
Oh man,
Intel
okay.
recently. That's
Pay
why.
particular attention to all the fairy tale references that he has there.
Yeah. Look,
That's
I
okay.
was
very
just in,
important.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I know what Dean went through because I literally started reading Fairy Tale when they released the first episode, right? So I know what
Yeah.
he's talking about, right? And it was one of those series where I couldn't wait for them to release the whole year's worth of episodes to read it. Usually I do that, right? I couldn't wait. I had to read it every week, right? Because it's that good, and Dean's not lying, right? But the point that I need to get to, right? Because we veered completely off topic, but the point is, and what she said, and it like it made so much sense to me after I did it, right? She said, listen, do whatever it is that you enjoy, and for me it was gaming at the time, right? So she's like, do it until you literally can't do anything anymore. You're like just about to pass out, right? So you're getting to that point where you need to pass out. So for you, Dean, because it's anime and you're not actually acting, right? There's no activity, you're just sitting and watching, right? It may take you past the morning, but whatever, right? You get to this point where you can't do anything anymore and you're just about to fall off to sleep, right? At that point, take out a pen and a page, right? And literally write down, right? The top 5 things that are your passions, the top 5 things that you hate, the top 5 things that you don't like about yourself, the top 5 things that you like about yourself, and the top 5 things that you want to change and you want to do. You'll find that the answers that you write down just before you pass out, right? And you read them later, those are the most truest answers that you can have because you've completely removed the mental aspect.
So you
Yeah,
don't.
you
I
just
mean,
write.
so Dean, you don't overthink something.
You don't
Just
think at
pure.
all. Yeah, you're reacting.
Just
Yeah.
it's just pure answer. Yeah.
Instinctual.
Yeah. And that is where I would say fatigue is probably the best. But remember, it's fatigue from a positive point of view. You've literally expended all your positive energy, right? And now you're just going to act on instinct, right? And that for me, I think is probably, and she used that example because obviously no one's going to ask you to go and work until you're blue in the face and then go write something. You'll be the most frustrated person in the world, right? But when you do that, you're at the most calm and centered position in the world. And that I found literally is a way you can use fatigue positively. Like if you want to think about something and you want an answer to something from within yourself, obviously, because getting an answer from outside most of the time is a waste of time, right? So if you want an answer from yourself about something, right, do it after you've done something that you completely enjoy, right? I'm not saying you have to break yourself and get into mental fatigue, but get it to a place where you're very calm and you're comfortable, right? And you're happy, and you'll find that most of the time you can use that as in a positive way.
What are you at mental fatigue? Like when you played Dota until you're about to fall asleep? Is that mental fatigue or physical fatigue?
So okay, with Dota it's both, right? I mean,
Okay, yeah, like Dota, it's mentally taxing, and you also your neck and your back go after a while.
yeah, but I mean, like you just like you tired, bro. You like I can't I can't make it anymore. I'm physically I need to sleep, right? Because
Okay, but if you had to,
Physically, I
if
need to
you're
sleep, and then like for example, like
tired, you carry on playing.
I always say to you guys around 2 o'clock in the morning as well. Like I can't do this anymore.
yeah. Well, we play another game, but you can't do it anymore because you like it's
And
not that
I choose someone who doesn't have to be involved, and I don't have
Yeah.
to use my brain, and I
Yeah.
don't like I choose sniper mid, and then like I just do nothing.
See, the thing with Dota is that I think the thing with gaming to that point is it's both physical and mental fatigue because you know how your brain works, right? It will suck up all the energy in your body to compute, right? And when you've sucked
Yeah,
up all that energy, right, you're not only mentally fatigued, you're also physically fatigued because it's not like you're going to pick up and go run a marathon, right?
yeah.
Even though you've just been sitting there, you can't go get up and go do exercise, right? You could, but you'll just be tired, right? And that for me is like that's the point that you want to get to. Now, I'm not saying as a person you need to go and play 28 hours worth of gaming. I'm saying get to a point where you naturally know that if you called it for the day, you'd be comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's the point. Like you could, like Yash says, you can keep playing, right? But it'd be an empty shell, you know. And that is the point which I consider fatigue. or that point where you can actually use you can use the instinctual side of yourself to a benefit.
I like that. That's a cool idea.
Well,
Try
she
it.
told me to try it, and the answers that I got, I only did it like once or twice, but the answers that I got from that was like, it's all I needed.
Was this the old Jedi lady at ESCOM?
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's the exact same one. Yeah, it's her.
I learned a lot from that lady. I think she's an actual self-help person now. I must find out.
She might be an actual Jedi.
Well, she had a lot of good advice because I think it just comes from experience, right? The more experience we have, the better advice we can give.
True.
Very true.
Very true.
I think fatigue is one of those things where for me, it's always one of those things where you also have to look at it in terms of like how much flow do I have? How much time am I spending on doing something? Is it menial? Is it tiring me out? Is it? But then you also need to find a way to replenish. And a lot of people take holidays and stuff like that. But for me, I don't know about you, but the week, if I'm on holiday, I prefer being in the same environment I am now. I just do something different. Like if I take a week off, I don't necessarily have to go somewhere else. I understand that it's a sort of mental resetter, but for me, the point of not doing the same thing is the resetter.
That's 100% it. Like when I talked about going down to Durban and spending time with friends and family and stuff, that might not necessarily be the preferable way to do it, but that's just what the routine was.
Yeah,
Because I mean, you don't have that much time to go and see family and friends that
yeah,
live
sure.
on the other side of the country
Yeah,
because you're busy and you're trying to build a career for yourself and
mm,
a life in your own space. So you want to maximize that time, and it's very different. Sometimes if you're not careful, you come back more drained than you left with, but you're just
yeah,
a different kind of drained.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, like you really do need to put the effort in to actually spend some time with yourself and figure out what your recharge components are,
mm,
and then make sure you do those things.
yeah. I agree.
Okay. Well, guys, do you have any other closing comments to make? Anything that you'd like to add, or any questions that you would like to ask?
I think in the current state that we're in, like global or local lockdowns, or like this has been a taxing period, and it's like nearly 2 years worth of lockdown for a lot of us.
Mm,
Hmm.
I implore anyone listening to this to actually take the time to figure out what it is that you need to recharge, because so many of us are either completely fatigued or on the raggedy edge of finding out where that limit really is, or been on the limit for so long
Hmm.
and just maybe don't know how to approach it. But just take the time and spend some time with yourself and figure it out, because it's important.
yeah. I'm actually gotten to a point now where going into the office might be less taxing than working from home.
For me, I mean, so we've
I don't know if I'm there yet.
yeah, no, I'm also not there at all. To be honest, it's a grudge thing for me to actually get into the office nowadays.
No, no, I mean, like, I understand that it's still a grudge thing. I think it's just a point of people that don't understand boundaries. If people understood boundaries, I wouldn't care.
That's very true.
But I mean,
I
it's
think
like, I think in your environment, when you shut down at 3, it's like, well, I'm giving it time, but whatever time you shut down, right, that's the time you shut
yeah,
down, right? Nobody's going to bother you after that.
yeah, yeah.
I guess it's the same with me, but the thing is that people they have an expectation of you to deliver over and above because you're in a comfortable environment, and that I think is a
Hmm.
no-no. And I think a lot of people are experiencing that. Like for me, I don't like working more than the allotted hours I get paid, not because I'm not committed to my job, but because it's a transaction.
Ooh, that's save that for another day, because that's
No,
worth
but that's
talking about.
exactly what mental fatigue is. I mean, mental fatigue stems from the fact that people are overdoing something that they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, but I mean, what you're talking about, what you mentioned just now, you've essentially what you've labeled what's been going on, which is the diluting of the economic value of employees.
Yeah, but that's,
through
I mean,
expectation.
that's
Yeah, that's what a job is
that's
worth, right? I mean,
yeah,
they pay you for your time.
yeah. I mean, you're
Yeah,
trading,
and if
yeah, you're
more
trading
time,
your life for your money.
yes,
Yeah,
and essentially what this whole, if they expect you to deliver after hours, or you expect it to be online for more hours, they've essentially diluted your value.
yeah, that's exactly it. And
Correct. Yes.
y-
I love what you said, dude. That's huge. Like
people,
that needs to be spoken about more.
but I mean, the literal negative half of that entire conversation is mental fatigue and burnout.
But it's a worth discussion as well. I mean, it's this fatigue, 100%. You're right there, but
Yeah,
essentially, like they've just cut your value, your worth down
yeah,
without any discussion. They
yeah.
just were like, you were getting paid X amount per hour. Now you're gonna, we want 2 more hours on top of that, but we're gonna pay the same.
Yeah. Because remember that mental fatigue is a stopping point, but it's not the end of the line. You understand that, right? The end of
Yeah.
the line is
Yes.
burnout. And when I was doing studies, I did a whole case study on burnout, right? And burnout for me, like we understand fatigue and saturation are the point where like I can't go anymore, right? Burnout is when they keep telling you to go, right? And that is what's happening now, right? And mental fatigue is way pushed way past that. And when you get to the stage of burnout, it's actually negative. What happens is negative repercussions because now you haven't spent time with all your family and whatever, right? But also you've degraded yourself. Like look at all those people. Like look at I can use myself as an example. I studied so hard. I stopped training and eating correctly, right? So now I've picked up weight. But because of the weight, you have these other effects like you increase your fat content in your body, you decrease your health, you decrease your life expectancy, right? And
Yeah.
that is repercussions of going past mental fatigue, or not past mental fatigue, but dragging mental fatigue to burnout, right? And that is literally half the
Yeah.
discussion of mental fatigue. And if you, as Dean says, if you don't value your own personal time, what's going to happen is at some point there's parts of your life that you're going to completely forget about.
Yeah. You neglect it to the point where it disappears.
Yeah, but it's not even like it's your fault anymore. You're committed to something because it's my lifeblood, right? If I don't do it, I'm going to get fired, right? Or my boss is not going to
Yeah.
be happy and I'm not going to get the promotion and I'm not going to blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. It carries on. You can give yourself 100 different things to say that this is what's going to happen negatively if I don't do what they're asking of me. And I understand this. I mean, like, I can't say that you shouldn't do it, right? What I should be saying is, should you be in a situation where someone devalues your 8 hours, right? Now, there's obviously the case of if you're doing nothing during those 8 hours, then whose fault is it really? But if you're committing for those 8 hours, right, and you do, and if you're committing for those 8 hours, personally for me, if I'm committing for 8 hours and you ask me to go extra, I'm sorry, but that is not happening, right? But I've put my foot in the sand and I've drawn the line. But not everybody's like that.
Yes.
Some people will be like, no, it's fine, I'll work the 12 hours or whatever because they're paying me, you know? And a lot of our friends do that, right? And when they have these discussions about, I was working so hard and I worked till like, and you like, we call people and they're still on work calls and stuff like that, and you're speaking to them on like a Friday night or whatever, because sometimes we do group calls. And if someone is on a work call, I'm like, what is going on? Like, you understand that you don't owe them this, right? But I can't be the one to say that because their life is different, and I can't say you mustn't do that. Maybe they're committed to something and they enjoy doing it. There's a different side to it, right? Maybe it challenges them. But understand that when you reach a point of mental fatigue, you must understand that there's the other side of it. Because once you go past mental fatigue and you continuously run down, right? You're going to start forgetting stuff that you're supposed to be doing, right? And I think personal health should take preference over, and my company does that well. They're like, listen, if you're having a bad day and you need a break, I understand. And if you need to take time, take time. Because we'd rather have an employee that's working at 80 to 100% than have an employee that's working at 20 to 30%.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
And
very good. That's a very good point you bring up as well. The support factor of
yeah,
who supports you, how to get support, and things like that, and just taking that time off really.
yeah. And my team does that well. Like if I tell my manager, listen, but I'm committed, right? So when I need to deliver, I deliver, right? But
Yeah.
when I know that I'm having a bad day and I know that I don't have to deliver right away, right? And I can still finish my work within the allotted period of time or whatever it is, then you know what?
Hmm.
You are okay. I have leave days, so I just take leave days. But some people don't. Some people just don't do anything. Some people work extra and then they don't even get paid overtime. You know, I don't understand it, but I can't speak for other people. So personally, for me, if I'm not getting paid overtime, I'm not working overtime.
Yeah, but you're also in a position where you can put your foot down. A lot of people aren't. Like if you're not going to be
Yeah,
the person that works overtime, then they'll just move you along and they'll find someone who will.
right. So that's what I mean, though. I mean, some people don't have that choice, right? Um,
Yeah,
but then you have to ask yourself, listen, are you okay with that? And if you are saying, yeah, I don't have another choice or whatever it is, then look, I'm not going to say, it's your fault. You need to change your environment, leave your job, blah, blah, blah. I can't say that because it's not easy to get a job out there either. I mean, to be fair,
no, like
right?
not now.
Yeah. But the thing is that you need to also understand that if you keep going and you're actually a person that's reaching mental fatigue and burnout consistently, right? At some point, yeah, even if you get the position that you wanted, is it going to get any better? No. Can you live like that? That's the question.
Very true. Yeah.
So you need to also be able to answer those questions for yourself. Can I keep going like this? And I realized, no, I can't. Right? At one point, I was like, dude, if I keep going like this, I'm going to have a heart attack. So I was like,
Yeah,
no, I need to stop. And then I decided.
But once again, it's just knowing that limit and seeing the negative effects, knowing the limit, and then making the change.
Yeah, you kind of need to hit some sort of wall, right? Because I used to be one of those people that worked 16-hour days. I used to leave work at 8:30 when the guards were locking the offices, right? Who does that, right?
Mm.
Um, but the thing is
I
that
used to do that in my first job, actually,
yeah,
by the way,
yeah,
as well.
bro.
Yeah.
I used to leave when the
same with
guards were
me.
closing the offices. I was like, he's like, yeah, we're closing up now. I'm like, oh shit, I need to leave. Okay, save. I'll carry on tomorrow, right? And I did that for like
Yeah.
3 or 4 years. I got to this point where I was like, no way, not anymore, right? And but the thing is that I was lucky enough to make that decision for myself, right? And I'm
Mhm.
also lucky enough to say, listen, I cannot accept any more in terms of this is I'm not going to do anymore. Right? Not everybody's like that. So it's also a thing of like if put it to you this way, right? I'm one of those people that I would leave if they ask me to do stuff that I'm not comfortable doing, I'll just leave. Even if it means I take a pay cut for like 30%, whatever the case. But I'm committed to certain things with like Yash is committed to the orange zone within his range. That's my orange zone, right?
Mm.
And I think you need to draw the line for yourself as a person and say, these are the things that I'm willing to do, these are the things that I'm not wanting to, because this is more important to me than this and this and this. And I view money and work as an exchange. I view it that way, but I mean, not everybody's the same, right? Other people don't have a choice.
Yeah, it's not an exchange; it's survival for them.
Yeah. Some people work 3 jobs, but I can't compete with that.
No, yeah, that's true. Like we don't have the context for what they go through.
Hmm.
Okay, cool.
Don't think so. Not for
No.
Anything
me.
else, guys?
I think let's not leave people in the worst position, I suppose, when they finish listening to this. I think there are positive sides to mental fatigue, and you can learn where your mental fatigue points are, but also understand how and what you like to do, as Dean said, to replenish those sides. Because it's important that you not run yourself down, but do the things that you like doing as well. A lot of people watch TV, Netflix, all those things. If that's what you like, do it. And
Yeah, I
I
think also like learn the difference between like switching off and recharging because I think maybe Netflix is something you do to switch off, but does it actually recharge you? And ask yourself
yeah.
that question: like, do I feel recharged after this? Do I feel energized? And if the
Mm.
answer is no, then there's nothing wrong with switching off. But every like maybe 2 days out of a week, instead of switching off, do something to recharge. You can still
Mm.
switch off 3 days a week, but after work, but then do something to recharge yourself, and make a list. Like, keep a list of what things recharge you, and then add to that list so that you have options.
Like Yash did.
Yeah.
To you listeners, thank you so much for listening in to our rambles at times, and we hope you gain some value that you can use in your life. So this is your bro code signing off. Have a powerful day. Until next time, cheers.